My favorite part was when we were out at the desert and I had a full thermos of coffee and we're trying to get the door open and like pushing against that 60-mile-an-hour wind, and I think the door slammed shut and the whole thermos went everywhere.
Yeah, a good gallon.
Good gallon of coffee just kind of everywhere in the car. Like,
yeah,
okay.
That's kind of how the project started, actually.
I've known Aaron a long time, but I think the more we talk, we also realize, like, I think our lives were also on parallel trajectories at similar times. You know, we're about the same age and kind of moved to LA around the same time and knew the same people, but didn't actually, you know, work on anything until a few years ago.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Well, and I think that was, like, I ended up shooting a no-age thing for Monster Children.
Right.
And it was like this video like thing where we were shooting, I was shooting you guys and you were answering questions about your new record, but then we had, like, we're reshooting footage that you guys had already shot or something. It was a very confusing, fun project. And at that point we started working, like we just started hanging out a little more.
And so I felt like when it was time to work on a solo record, I liked the idea of collaborating, even though it's a solo record, but I wanted to have this ability to tell a bigger story than just me, you know, playing guitar for 40 minutes. I felt like there was a more creative way to do that. If I was going to do my first solo record with Dangerbird, I felt like there was a sense that let's get a little bit bigger. In my first conversation with Aaron Espinosa at Dangerbird Records, the idea was pitch us something weird. Like, what do we want to get out there? We want to do something that isn't that other record labels aren't doing and other artists aren't doing. We want to make a release that has the ability to live in multimedia and in different forms outside of just a record. And that really appealed to me. And so the first person I thought of was Aaron Farley, that we could do something that lived in a music world, but also went further beyond that into a multimedia installation world. For me, like, I kind of find inspiration through visuals. You know, a lot of these instrumental songs would have names or concepts that were inspired by or reflected by motion pictures and films. So when it came time to do a whole record of stuff, instead of, you know, writing a soundtrack to a film I had already seen or being inspired by a film I'd already seen, I had the idea to write a soundtrack for a film that didn't exist yet. And that film is what Soundfield, you know, the visual part became. So I sort of needed, in order to write this record from a musical perspective, I needed a film to sort of bounce it off of. Like, one couldn't have happened without the other. His process of layering video and his, you know, sort of ability to capture multiple sources visually at once and loop them felt very analogous to what I was doing with sound and music. So we met and we're talking about, you know, the project and what it could be, and, you know, we quickly sort of came upon the idea of Southern California and the unusual nature of what it is to live in Southern California. I grew up out in the Inland Empire near, you know, the desert and that sort of part of California, and Aaron comes from Spokane, Washington, but has lived here long enough to kind of see what what a strange sort of place it is. In that, like, you know, people that aren't from Los Angeles, they always wonder, like, well, what's it like there? I went to Disneyland once when I was a kid, and or I went to the Hollywood sign, or I saw this. But I think, you know, the strange part of being from a place that's like this is you realize it's not one place, it's 80 different places, it's 1,000 different places, depending on how you look at it. But the one thing that is constant is the freeway, that no matter where you're going, you're going to be on one, if not, you know, multiple freeways at some point in your day. And if you live here, that's probably every day you're on this freeway, probably the same freeway. And so for me growing up, that was always just normal. Growing up out there in the Inland Empire, that's where you lived and all the fun stuff happened. closer into Los Angeles. So you're always traveling on the 10 freeway to go to concerts, to go to art events, to go to movies, to go skateboarding, to go do anything. It was nothing to jump on a freeway and sit in traffic for at least an hour and a half. So the idea of being in a car all the time and just having this solitary experience and also this communal experience and also just seeing Southern California from the window of a car within 10 feet of these freeways just was a very common idea, but I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel a little bit and see different parts of the world and realize like how weird that is to just live on a highway for 90% of your life. You're at some point on this highway. So I thought it was an interesting place to look at creatively and just sort of reflect and sort of meditate almost in what does that mean to live in a world of freeways like Southern California, but also what's beautiful about it and what is there that's unique to this way of living.
Well, and we also started thinking of it as kind of a river that brings in, it's like a river of commerce that brings in, brings people in to do things in the city and then washes them out at the end of the day and brings them in and washes them out. And it's this constant thing that as the city changes around it, it gets more packed or it gets less packed or like the outputs change or where people are going change, but this kind of river of humanity keeps going the same, and it's this fast way to get from one side to the other, and realize like kind of how amazing and beautiful that is, and also how kind of depressing it can be just sitting trying to get somewhere and on the same line and realizing how many people do that every single day for their whole life and like take this same track back and forth all day. And so then when we started talking about it and you kind of started basing it off of the beginning of the piece being out in the desert, that it really got us thinking too how amazing a place Los Angeles is, where you can get from the desert to the beach in like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
On the same road.
On the same road.
Ten freeway goes from east to west, and we could start out in the desert and then end at the beach. So we would do sunrise at the desert, morning in the suburbs, and midday, like noon, downtown LA, and then end with the sunset at the beach.
As much as it's a record, it's also a film, and it's also going to be like a physical environment that you can be inside of. And I think that's exciting for me and like speaks a lot to the work that I've done in the past. So.